My name is Rebecca Collins, and at 32, I thought my career at Horizon Marketing Group was unshakable. 7 years of tireless dedication, late nights, and strategic wins had built what I believed to be a solid foundation. But all of that came crashing down the moment Allison Parker entered our doors. She joined as the new marketing director, hired straight from our fiercest competitor, Pinnacle Marketing. From the moment she stepped into the building, polished, confident, calculating, something shifted. I tried to ignore it at first, tried to believe the best, but yesterday changed everything. Standing before my entire team, Allison looked me dead in the eye and said the words I never thought I'd hear: "You're terminated, effective immediately." No warning, no explanation, just cold finality in front of the very people I had led for years. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I simply nodded and replied, "I hope the client presentation goes well on Friday." That's when her expression faltered. "What presentation?" she asked, caught off guard. I just smiled. Before I share what happened next, leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, because this story, it's only just beginning. Let me take you back to where it all started. Fresh out of college, marketing degree in hand, I walked into Horizon Marketing Group with a fire in my belly and something to prove. I started as a low-level associate, fetching coffee, staying late for slide decks, absorbing every bit of wisdom I could from those around me. The hours were brutal, the expectations high, but I was relentless. By my third year, I had clawed my way up to account manager. I earned that title with sweat and sheer grit. I took on the projects nobody wanted, the clients others had given up on, and I turned them around. Deadlines became my fuel, pressure my second skin. Somewhere along the way, I became known as the woman who could save a sinking ship, and I wore that badge proudly. My boss back then, Catherine, saw potential in me before I saw it in myself. She pushed me hard. "Rebecca," she once told me, "you need to stop hiding behind spreadsheets and start trusting your instincts." That moment, one where I dared to challenge a senior executive's flawed campaign in front of the entire board, changed everything. It was terrifying, and it earned me my next promotion. By year 4, I was leading a 5-person team as senior account executive, and that team, they weren't just coworkers, they were my work family. There was Amanda Garcia, our digital strategist with a mind like a supercomputer. No one could dissect data like she did. Troy Wilson, the creative mastermind who made even the dullest product look revolutionary. Danielle Washington, a copywriter whose words had the power to make people feel, act, change. Patrick Moore, the rookie with social media instincts well beyond his years. And Zoe Chen, our client relations whisperer, empathetic, calm, and impossibly good at de-escalating even the tensest calls. We weren't just good, we were great together. We picked each other up when life hit hard. When Troy went through his divorce, we carried his load without hesitation. When Amanda became a mom, we tag-teamed her projects so she could ease back in. This wasn't just a team, it was a unit built on trust, loyalty, and mutual respect. And then everything began to unravel. 6 months ago, we lost 2 major clients. Not just any clients, flagship accounts that had been with Horizon for years. They jumped ship to Pinnacle, and the fallout was immediate. Whispers filled the office. The board was applying pressure. Horizon needed a win, and fast. "They're bringing in someone new," Amanda warned me one afternoon over lunch. "From Pinnacle, no less." I brushed it off. "Probably a consultant," I said. No way they'd actually hire from the company that just stole 2 of our clients. I was wrong. 1 week later, our CEO, Michael Barnes, stood in the conference room introducing Allison Parker, Pinnacle's former executive director, as Horizon's new marketing director. She stood tall in her tailored navy suit, eyes sharp and unreadable. "I'm here to help Horizon streamline operations and unlock growth potential," she said, her tone cool and authoritative. "There will be changes, yes, but they're necessary." Change came fast and hard. Daily performance reports, mandatory competitor analyses, unspoken expectations to stay late, metrics that rewarded new business over client retention. All imposed without consulting long-standing team leaders like me, people who actually knew the clients and how our workflows functioned. I tried to address it, I really did, but the first time I raised a concern during a department meeting, Allison cut me off mid-sentence. These procedures have worked across multiple organizations, she said. We're not here to reinvent the wheel. The message was clear. My voice no longer mattered. But that wasn't the worst of it. Soon, subtle acts of sabotage began. Calendar invites to key client meetings mysteriously disappeared. My reports were edited, without my knowledge, before being sent to clients. Budget proposals were denied without cause, even while identical requests from other departments were approved. Still, I clung to professionalism. I showed up at 7:30 every morning, took detailed notes, saved every email, documented every interaction. I tried scheduling one-on-ones with Allison to find common ground, but she always canceled last minute. Other priorities, she claimed. Then came the Apex Technologies campaign. Apex was more than a client to me. I had spent 3 years cultivating a partnership with their CMO, James Richardson. Their upcoming product launch, a revolutionary piece of security software, was poised to dominate the market. The presentation, scheduled for Friday, would seal a multi-million-dollar deal and cement Horizon's place as their long-term strategic partner. I had led the charge from day one. We'd spent 6 months perfecting every aspect: research, creative direction, messaging, digital strategy. I knew Apex inside and out, their communication preferences, their decision-making process, their fears, their vision. And then, in her second week, Allison held a creative strategy meeting about the Apex campaign and didn't invite me. I only found out because Troy asked me afterward, "So, are we seriously pivoting the messaging to focus on pricing now?" I was floored. Pricing? We've positioned Apex as a premium solution based on security innovation. They've told us they don't want to compete on price. Not according to Allison, he said. She thinks we need to undercut competitors. I confronted her, calmly, logically. Allison, I've worked closely with Apex for years. Their entire brand rejects price wars. They want to lead with value and innovation. She gave me that tight smile again. Well, sometimes fresh eyes see what insiders miss. Let's test it and see. I should have known then that this wasn't about strategy. It was personal. From that moment on, it felt like I was being erased one spreadsheet, one deleted invite, one reworded email at a time. Allison wasn't just shifting our strategy. She was systematically cutting me out of it. A week after the creative meeting debacle, I found out that Allison had presented my team's quarterly performance metrics to the executive committee. My slides, my language, word for word from my reports. And when Michael complimented her on the thorough analysis, she smiled and accepted the praise like she'd spent nights pulling that data together. I sat through it in silence, furious, invisible. The little offenses piled up fast. Reports I submitted would be sent back with vague notes like, "Rework this," only to be later distributed nearly identical to my originals. Budgets slashed, clients reassigned. In meetings, Allison developed a new habit, interrupting me mid-thought, redirecting the conversation as if my contributions were clutter instead of content. I was being squeezed out, and we both knew it. Still, I held the line, for myself and for my team. I doubled down on my work. I got in before dawn and left after sunset. Every email, every document, every client touchpoint, I logged it all. I kept records Allison wouldn't expect. And most importantly, I shielded my team from the worst of the pressure. When Allison implemented a convoluted new reporting template, I stayed late every night that week, converting our accounts myself so my team didn't drown in busy work. When she publicly criticized our social metrics, I had a revised strategy ready by the next morning. I took her barbs, translated them into constructive guidance, and made sure the team still felt like we were moving forward. But even Amanda noticed. "She's gunning for you," she whispered one night, long after most of the office had gone home. We were eating cold noodles and revising the Apex deck for what felt like the 10th time. "She's under pressure to prove herself," I said, pretending to sound reasonable, but inside I was spiraling, because Amanda was right. I just kept telling myself, once we land this Apex launch, things will stabilize. Results talk. Once the revenue rolls in, the politics will take a back seat. So we pushed. The Apex campaign became our lifeline. We had poured ourselves into it. Months of in-depth market analysis, buyer journey mapping, persona development, and creative brainstorming. It was the kind of campaign that reminded me why I fell in love with marketing in the first place. Troy's visuals were breathtaking. infographics, and dynamic animations that made our insights sing. Danielle wrote messaging so sharp and intuitive, it felt like Apex's customers had written it themselves. Patrick's social media plan was bold and perfectly aligned with the digital habits of their B2B audience. Amanda crunched projections and trend lines with surgical precision, and I tied it all together: strategy, narrative, execution. It was our masterpiece, and it came at a cost. I canceled my annual Cape Cod vacation. The first time in 10 years I missed that trip with my college friends. My sister Melissa was pissed about all the missed family dinners. My apartment? A glorified closet to shower and change clothes between 14-hour days. Even my boyfriend Brian was running out of patience. One night, after another rescheduled dinner, he finally snapped. "I get that your career matters," he said, "but does anything else? Because it feels like there's no space in your life for anything except Horizon and this presentation." And he wasn't wrong. But I couldn't afford to fall behind. Not with Allison lurking, waiting. Not with my job on the line. Apex wasn't just a project. It was proof of everything I'd built, everything I knew. So I kept pushing. The night before it all fell apart, my team and I stayed until nearly midnight doing one last run-through in the conference room. We ordered Thai food, dimmed the lights, and projected our final deck onto the screen. "This is it," Troy said, arms crossed, admiring the culmination of our work. "This is the campaign that's going to define us." "Apex is going to eat this up," Danielle added, grinning. I smiled, finally letting myself exhale. Let's get some rest. Tomorrow's the big day. But we never made it to tomorrow. I got to the office early the next morning, still humming with anticipation. The place was quiet. Just me, the cleaning crew, and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. I reviewed my notes, rehearsed key points, double-checked the printed leave-behinds. Everything was set. Then the rest of the team trickled in, and something felt off. Amanda wouldn't meet my eyes. Patrick kept glancing toward the door. Troy and Danielle were whispering by the coffee machine like nervous interns. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "There's a department meeting at 9, Amanda said quietly. "Allison sent out a mandatory invite last night." "I didn't get one," I said, checking my phone again. "Empty." Nobody replied. They just stared at the floor. At 8:30, Linda from HR showed up, clipboard in hand, face expressionless. She whispered something to our office manager and then took a seat in the side conference room. My stomach turned to lead. I called the team together for our usual stand-up. "Let's just do a quick check-in," I said, forcing a smile. But their responses were clipped, distracted. Zoe looked like she was about to cry. "Guys, what's happening?" I asked finally, a little more sharply. Silence. Then Amanda spoke. "Rebecca, I think it's about you." At exactly 9:00, we filed into the largest conference room on the floor. I was the last to arrive. Something about the way the chairs were arranged, the way Linda from HR stood silently at the head of the table beside Allison, and the way the security guard from the front lobby was now stationed just inside the door, it all told me what I needed to know. But my body moved on instinct. I sat in the only empty seat, directly across from Allison. She didn't wait long. "Now that everyone is here," she began, her voice crisp and polished, "I've called this meeting to announce some organizational changes, effective immediately." Then she looked at me. "Rebecca Collins is being terminated from her position, effective immediately." The words were so sharp, so final, that for a split second I wasn't sure I'd heard her correctly. My eyes scanned the room. Amanda's jaw had dropped. Troy froze, coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Zoe looked down at her lap, as if willing herself to disappear. Allison kept talking, her voice as smooth as glass. "As you all know, Horizon Marketing has been implementing higher performance standards across all departments. Unfortunately, Rebecca has been unable to meet these standards despite numerous opportunities for improvement." Numerous opportunities? There had been no PIP, no meeting, no warning, no documentation, no discussion, no accountability, nothing but strategic silence. "As a result," she continued, "Rebecca's accounts will be redistributed, and I will be taking direct oversight of our major clients." I barely heard what came next. Something about Linda conducting exit interviews, something about ensuring a smooth transition. All I could hear was the thundering echo of my own heartbeat in my ears. But then something unexpected happened. In that unbearable silence, I found something steadier than shock. I found my composure. I sat up straighter. I looked Allison dead in the eyes. And I spoke in a voice I barely recognized, calm, clear, and absolutely unshaken. I understand, I said. I'll gather my things. Then I paused, just long enough for the moment to land. And I hope the client presentation goes well on Friday. A flicker crossed her face, just the briefest flash of confusion. What presentation? The Apex Technologies product launch strategy, I replied. The one scheduled for Friday at 10. James Richardson and his full executive team will be here. Her jaw tightened. I'm sure we have all the necessary materials, she said, but her tone faltered. I'm sure you'll figure it out, I said with a small smile. They're particularly looking forward to the proprietary threat analysis. It's quite complex. That landed. Allison said nothing more. Linda stood then, a silent signal that the show was over. Rebecca, if you'll come with me, we can complete the necessary paperwork. I turned to my team, Amanda, Troy, Danielle, Patrick, Zoe, and gave them what I hoped was a look of reassurance. It's been an honor working with you, I said. Thank you for everything. And then I walked out of the room, escorted by a woman I'd barely spoken to and a security guard who'd greeted me every morning for 5 years. Ron, the security guard, wouldn't meet my eye at first, but when we reached my office, he finally said, I'm sorry about this, Miss Collins. I nodded. Me too. My office looked different now, smaller, emptier, like it had already been scrubbed of me. Linda handed me a cardboard box and began rattling off HR procedures in a voice that sounded like an automated message. I barely listened. I moved on muscle memory, collecting framed photos, a few books, my degree, and the campaign award our team had won last year. Allison appeared in the doorway before I finished packing. I'll need all your client files and presentation materials, she said briskly. I didn't even look up. Everything is on the company server, properly labeled and organized. And the Apex presentation? The slides are finalized and stored in the shared folder. That part was true, but what I didn't say, and what she hadn't thought to ask, was that the true power of that presentation wasn't in the visuals or the bullet points. It was in the story, in the context, in everything that lived in my head after 3 years of building that relationship. Linda held out her hand. Your badge and phone, please. I gave them up. Just like that, 7 years of my life were reduced to a cardboard box. As Ron walked me to the elevator, I caught one last glimpse of my team, standing at the far end of the hallway. Amanda, eyes wet. Troy with his hands clenched into fists. Zoe's lips trembling. I gave them a final nod and stepped inside the elevator. The doors closed. And just like that, it was over. The drive home was a blur. The cardboard box sat in the passenger seat like a tombstone for my career. Traffic moved around me, but I couldn't register it. It wasn't even lunchtime yet, and I had already lost the job I had built my life around. When I reached my apartment, I dropped the box on the kitchen counter and stood in the quiet. My space, usually just a stopover between work and sleep, felt like a stranger's home, empty, echoing. And then the emotions crashed down. I paced the floor. I cried. I screamed into my pillow. I threw the box across the room and watched as papers scattered like fallen feathers. She planned this, I said aloud, my voice ragged. She wanted an audience. I opened my laptop, hands trembling, and started drafting a furious email to Michael. Paragraphs of betrayal and outrage. But halfway through, I stopped myself. Not yet. Not like this. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I let myself fall apart. For 30 minutes, I allowed the grief and rage to take up space. I lay on the floor, eyes closed, breath shaking. Then I got up, washed my face, made coffee, and began to think. Not like a victim, but like a strategist. The steam from the coffee rose in slow, curling ribbons as I sat at my kitchen table and tried to process the wreckage of my morning. No matter how I turned it over in my mind, the conclusion was the same. I'd been ambushed. Allison had orchestrated every detail, timing it right before a major client presentation, in front of my entire team, ensuring maximum humiliation. But that's not what haunted me. What haunted me was the thought of my team. The look in Amanda's eyes, the silence in Troy's voice. They were stuck now, caught in the crossfire of a power play they didn't ask for, and Apex was going to walk into that boardroom tomorrow and expect a strategy that only existed inside my head. Then my phone buzzed. And can I call you after work? This is insane. Before I could reply, more messages lit up the screen. Anna Troy, miss. We're all in shock. No one saw this coming. Danielle, this is wrong. We're with you. I hadn't realized how much I needed those words until I saw them. support, loyalty, truth. It gave me just enough strength to answer Amanda's call when it came, much earlier than expected. I told Allison I had a doctor's appointment, she said, voice hushed. I'm in my car. Are you okay? I'm processing, I said, staring into my half-empty mug. What's happening over there? Complete chaos, she whispered. As soon as you left, Allison called an emergency meeting. She's trying to figure out the presentation. She's asking who has what. Keeps saying it should all be in the system. I allowed myself the faintest smile. And is it? The slides are, but without the context, it's just design. No story, no strategy, no narrative. Amanda sighed. No one knows the background. Allison's getting frustrated. Has anyone contacted Apex? That's the thing, Amanda said. Michael stopped by asking about the presentation. When he found out what happened to you, he looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. He pulled Allison into his office, right in front of the team. That gave me a flicker of satisfaction. But I knew better than to get my hopes up. Executives protect themselves first. Then my phone buzzed again. A name appeared that I hadn't expected to see. And Bradley. He'd left Horizon last year for a rival agency. We hadn't spoken in months. Lunch, his text read. You'll want the outside perspective. We met at a cafe far from the office, neutral ground. He looked at me with genuine concern. I heard what happened, he said, sliding a coffee across the table, and I have thoughts. I didn't interrupt, I just listened. This industry's smaller than people think. Word gets around. Everyone knows you're the reason Horizon still has Apex. You've got relationships, credibility. That doesn't go away just because someone pushed you out. What do I do now, I asked honestly. Fight it? Let her fail? Bradley leaned in. You could do both, or neither. Just don't make any decisions from a place of anger. You've got leverage now. Use it. But do it your way. That stuck with me. Later that evening, I called Margaret, my former boss and longtime mentor. She didn't mince words. Allison made a tactical mistake, she said. She removed a strategic asset without understanding your value. Now she's exposed. What should I do? Sleep on it, she advised. But remember, how you respond now will define your reputation more than what just happened. Clients come and go, titles come and go, but character sticks. As the day faded into night, more messages trickled in. And Patrick. Allison's looking through your client files. She's asking about your notes for Apex. Zoe. James Richardson called asking for you. He didn't sound happy when he was told you were unavailable. Piece by piece, the picture sharpened. Allison had fired me without realizing the depth of what I held. Relationships, insights, strategy. And now, on the eve of the biggest client pitch of the year, she was scrambling. It would have been so easy to let her fail. Let the presentation fall apart. Let the client walk. Let Horizon suffer. But something tugged at me, something deeper than pride or revenge. It was my team, the campaign we built, the client we'd promised to serve with excellence, and the reputation I'd spent 7 years crafting. Then, at 9:30 that night, my phone rang again. Amanda. Her voice trembled with exhaustion and frustration. It's all falling apart, she said. We've been here since 7 a.m., trying to salvage this presentation. Allison doesn't understand the strategy. Troy's redoing slides. Danielle's rewriting copy. Patrick's trying to rebuild your research from scratch. I stood up, fully alert now. Where is Allison? She just stepped into a call with Michael. I didn't hesitate. What can I do to help? I don't know, Amanda said, sounding defeated. I just needed to talk to someone who understands. Oh, and James called 3 times today. He's not buying the reorganization excuse. He specifically asked for you. Just then, my phone buzzed again. A new call. The name on the screen made me stop breathing. James Richardson. I have to take this, I told Amanda. It's James. I'll call you back. I clicked over, took a deep breath, and answered. Rebecca, he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. Finally. What's going on over there? I'm no longer with Horizon, I replied calmly, as of this morning. There was a pause on the line, long, heavy. That's unexpected, James said, especially 2 days before the most important presentation of the year. Did something happen? Let's just say there were organizational changes. I'm going to be blunt, he said. I don't feel confident moving forward with Horizon without you. I'm seriously considering postponing the entire campaign and reevaluating our relationship with them. The words landed like thunder. This wasn't just a client upset over a scheduling change. This was a major account threatening to walk. And then, without missing a beat, he added, Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you. We're building out an internal marketing team. I was going to approach you next quarter about coming on as director of marketing. But after today, I think that conversation needs to happen sooner. I blinked, stunned. A direct offer? From a client? A respected company? A possible way forward? That's an incredibly generous offer, I said, and one I'd love to discuss. First, James continued, we need to talk about tomorrow. The presentation. Our CEO and executive team are committed. We can't postpone. Would you consider consulting, even just for the morning? That was the moment I'd been circling all day. The crossroads. Spite or integrity? Vengeance or professionalism? I'll get back to you within the hour, I said. After we hung up, I walked the perimeter of my apartment, thinking all. This wasn't about Horizon anymore. This was about my future, my reputation, my values. If I helped with the presentation, it wouldn't be for Allison, or even for Horizon. It would be for the team, for Apex, and for myself. I called Amanda back. What exactly is missing from tomorrow's deck? Everything that was in your head, she said. The client personalities, the messaging rationale, the research insights. Allison has the slides, but she doesn't know how to tell the story. I made my decision. Text me your personal email. I'm going to send you notes tonight. Not everything, just enough to give you a fighting chance. Amanda's voice caught. Really? After everything? I'm not doing it for them, I said. I'm doing it for you, for the team, for Apex, and honestly, for my peace of mind. After hanging up with Amanda, I sat down at my kitchen table and pulled out my laptop. The house was silent, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional buzz of my phone lighting up with more supportive texts. I stared at the blank document. What do I give them? Not too much, not everything, but enough to help the team survive tomorrow. Enough so they wouldn't fall apart in front of Apex's executive team. Enough to protect the project we had all bled for. I spent the next 2 hours pouring everything I knew into a clean, concise document, summaries of strategic insights, client preferences, psychological profiles I'd developed on Apex decision makers over years of meetings, and a simplified rationale for every major recommendation we had made. I even highlighted likely client concerns and suggested responses, but I left out the deeper strategy, the interwoven logic behind our multi-channel rollout, the unspoken context for each slide's order, and the subtleties in language crafted to appeal to Susan Bennett, Apex's notoriously skeptical CEO. I was helping, but only just enough. When I hit send, I attached a short note. Use this wisely, and only for tomorrow. Then I texted James. Me. Send some notes to help the team. Won't be attending in person. Just clarifying expectations. His response came within minutes. M. James. I appreciate this more than you know, but I still believe your presence would make a difference. Please reconsider. It's your work, after all. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I stood up, walked to the window, and stared down at the quiet street below. The city lights shimmered in a soft haze, and I realized how deeply tired I was. Tired of carrying so much. Tired of being careful. Tired of proving myself to people who had already made up their minds. But I wasn't tired of the work. That was the truth at the center of everything. I still believed in the work, in strategy, in clarity, in making something that mattered. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Amanda. Amanda. Allison just told us the client is requesting your presence. Michael wants to speak with you in the morning. I froze. They wanted me back. After escorting me out, after humiliating me in front of my team, after tossing 7 years of loyalty aside with one sentence, now they wanted me back? Because they needed me. Because Apex had asked for me. I stared at the message for a long time, my pulse quickening. There was power in that ask. Not the petty, vengeful kind I'd imagined earlier, but a different kind. Quiet, steady. The kind of power that comes from doing the right thing, even when no one else does. I set my alarm for 6:30. Then I picked out my charcoal blazer, the one I always wore for big pitches, and hung it on the closet door. If tomorrow was going to be the day I returned to Horizon, even just for one morning, it wouldn't be with bitterness. It would be with strength. Friday morning arrived with a strange, crystalline calm. I dressed deliberately. The blazer, the burgundy blouse, my grandmother's pearl necklace. I looked in the mirror and didn't see someone broken. I saw someone ready. At 8 it was sharp, my phone rang. Michael Barnes. His voice was composed but cautious. Rebecca, he began, I understand you've been in contact with James Richardson. He's requested your presence at today's presentation. I'm aware, I said evenly. We'd like to propose a consulting arrangement, he continued, just for today. Standard day rate plus 20%. You'll have full access to the materials, and your role would be limited to ensuring the client's satisfaction. The offer was generous. More importantly, it came without apology, but that was expected. Executives rarely say sorry. They just adjust. I'll agree, I said, on one condition. What's that? My team receives full credit today. For all of it. The work, the strategy, the execution. Their names get said aloud. A pause, then, agreed. Can you be here by 9:30? The clients are arriving early. I'll be there. Click. Just like that, I was back in on my terms. Walking into Horizon's building felt surreal. I no longer had a badge, so I checked in as a guest. The receptionist's eyes widened when she read my name. Miss Collins, you're on the list, she said. Ron will escort you upstairs. Ron, the same guard who had escorted me out just yesterday, now walked silently beside me to the top floor. Good to see you again, Miss Collins, he said quietly in the elevator, even if just for today. The executive floor buzzed with anxious energy. People stopped mid-conversation as I passed. Some offered smiles. Others looked away, but no one said a word. My team was huddled in the small strategy room. When I walked in, Amanda nearly collapsed in relief. You actually came, she said, wrapping me in a quick hug. Your notes saved us last night, Patrick added. We've got your back, Danielle said firmly. I'm here for all of you, I said, voice steady. Let's review everything before they arrive. We were mid-discussion when Allison appeared in the doorway. Her face was tight, her posture rigid. Rebecca, she said, voice clipped, I understand you'll be joining us today. At the client's request, I replied pleasantly, just here to make sure everything runs smoothly. Before she could respond, Michael stepped in behind her. The Apex team has arrived. They're in the main conference room now, shall we? As we gathered our materials, Michael pulled me aside. I appreciate your professionalism, he said quietly. Today isn't the time to address what happened, but I do want you to know, I have questions about how this was handled. I nodded. Today is about the client, that's all. The moment I stepped into the conference room and locked eyes with James Richardson, everything else faded. He broke protocol, rising to greet me personally at the door. Rebecca, he said warmly, thank you for making this happen. Behind him sat the full Apex executive team, including Susan Bennett, the CEO. She had only ever attended one meeting before. Her presence made the stakes crystal clear. James introduced me to the group, saying plainly, Rebecca has been the strategic lead behind this campaign from day one. That statement, said in front of everyone, Allison included, reclaimed everything she'd tried to take from me. Allison stood at the front, clearly prepared to lead the meeting. But James interrupted gently. We were expecting Rebecca to guide us through the strategy. Michael gave a subtle nod. Allison, her expression frozen in place, stepped aside. Of course, she said, her tone brittle. Rebecca has been consulting on this project. I stepped forward and faced the Apex team. Thank you for being here, I began. Over the past 6 months, our team has developed a comprehensive market entry strategy for Security Shield that positions it as a category-defining product. Today, I'll walk you through our findings, our recommendations, and the execution roadmap. What followed was 2 hours of clarity, expertise, and precision. I highlighted each team member's work, Troy's visuals, Danielle's messaging, Amanda's data models. I made sure they were seen. Allison tried to interrupt a few times, but each time I redirected with grace, correcting errors without confrontation. The Apex team asked hard questions. I had the answers, real answers, drawn from years of conversations, meetings, and intuition. When it was over, Susan Bennett stood and said, This is exactly the caliber of work we expected. And then James added, with unmistakable intent, We'd like Rebecca to remain our strategic contact moving forward. Silence fell across the room. Michael cleared his throat. Let's discuss that offline. Susan smiled politely but firmly. It's a condition of our approval. Message received. The moment the Apex team left the conference room, the silence they left behind was thick and electric. Allison stood frozen, one hand still on her laptop, her expression unreadable. But everyone in the room had heard it. Susan Bennett's voice still echoed, It's a condition of our approval. There was no ambiguity. Michael finally broke the silence. I think we need to have a follow-up conversation. Allison, Rebecca, my office, please. He turned and walked out. Allison followed stiffly. I looked at my team. Amanda, Troy, Danielle, Patrick, Zoe, each one of them watching me, still caught between disbelief and something close to hope. "I'll fill you in after," I promised. Amanda gave me a small nod. "We'll be here." Walking behind Allison toward Michael's office, I felt no fear, no nerves, no anger, just calm. A kind of quiet resolve that comes when you know you've done everything right, even when the world tried to make you feel wrong. Michael's corner office was all glass and skyline views. Usually it felt like a boardroom in the clouds. Today it felt like neutral territory. He gestured for both of us to sit. "Well," he began, sitting behind his desk, fingers steepled, "we can all agree the presentation was a success." Neither of us said anything. "The client is satisfied, and we've secured the campaign, one of the most significant of the quarter," he continued, glancing briefly at Allison before looking directly at me. "Rebecca, your professionalism today, under these unusual circumstances, was exceptional." "Thank you," I said. "That was always the goal." "I'd like to speak candidly," he said. "Yesterday's events were not handled in accordance with our standard HR procedures. There was no documentation, no formal warning, and no chain of review. That was a serious oversight." He didn't say who made that oversight, but we all knew. Allison's lips pressed into a flat line, but she said nothing. Michael went on, "We'd like to offer you reinstatement, not just back into your old role, but a promotion. Senior Director of Client Strategy. You would report directly to me. Your salary would increase by 30%, and you'd have expanded authority over key accounts, including Apex." The offer hit me like a soft gust of wind, surprising, but not entirely unexpected. "There's more," he continued. "We're also offering a retention bonus in recognition of the mishandling of your termination." Still, Allison remained silent. Her posture had gone stiff, like she was trying not to flinch. I took a breath. "What about the reporting structure?" "You would not report to Allison," Michael clarified immediately. "You'd be on the same level, managing different segments. Your leadership would be independent." Finally, Allison spoke. Her voice was tight, but measured. "I want to acknowledge that I acted hastily. I underestimated the depth of your client relationships and your institutional knowledge. It was the closest thing to an apology I would ever get." "Thank you," I replied calmly. "I appreciate the offer. I'd like to take 24 hours to consider it." "Of course," Michael said quickly. "We'll hold the position open." As the meeting ended, he turned to Allison. "I'd like to speak with you privately for a moment." I stepped out and closed the door behind me. Out in the hallway, the tension finally broke. Amanda was the first to rush up. "Are you coming back?" "I don't know yet," I said truthfully. "But whatever happens, today wasn't just a win for me. It was a win for all of us." Danielle grinned. "That was the best mic drop I've ever seen in a pitch." Troy laughed. "He's practically made you the campaign's queen." But inside, I wasn't celebrating. I was weighing everything. Jemime. Later that evening, James Richardson called me directly. "I wanted to follow up," he said. "Our team was blown away. You did exactly what we needed, and more." "I'm glad it met expectations," I said. "Your feedback means a lot." "I wasn't kidding about the job offer," he said. "We're expanding Apex's in-house marketing team. I'd like to bring you on as director of marketing. It would mean building from the ground up, but with real influence. You wouldn't be a cog in a system. You'd be designing the system." It caught me off guard again, even though he'd mentioned it before. He continued, "I've worked with a lot of agencies over the years, Rebecca. Few people earn my trust the way you have. You understand both the business and the human side of marketing. That's rare." "What would the role look like?" I asked. "You'd lead a small, hand-picked team. You'd report directly to the executive committee. Competitive salary, full benefits, equity stake, and complete creative autonomy. It was everything I'd ever wanted. Autonomy, vision, a fresh start." "I'd like to give you a formal offer over the weekend," he said. "No pressure, but I hope you'll consider it seriously." "I will," I promised. And I meant it. That weekend, I sat on my balcony with a notebook and wrote down everything I was feeling. Reasons to return to Horizon. Familiarity, team loyalty, a second chance to lead, now on my terms, vindication. Reasons to leave. Emotional baggage, limited trust in leadership, risk of future sabotage, the chance to build something new. When I called Margaret to talk it through, she listened for a while, then said, "Rebecca, I hear more fire in your voice when you talk about Apex." I paused. She was right. "It feels like the right time for a change," I admitted. "Then trust that instinct. It's guided you this far." Monday morning, I walked back into Horizon for the last time, not as an employee, but as a professional tying up loose ends. I met with Michael in his office. "Thank you for the offer," I told him, "but I've decided to decline. I'm taking a position with Apex." His expression didn't change, but I saw the slight deflation in his shoulders. "I suspected we might lose you," he said. "May I ask what tipped the scale?" "It wasn't about spite," I answered. "It was about possibility. Apex offered me a chance to build something new, and that's where I'm at in my career. I need forward momentum." He nodded, thoughtful. "A client poaching our talent. It's not the first time, but they're getting one of the best." We shook hands. Then I made one final request. "I'd like to work a 2-week transition, consulting to hand off my accounts properly, especially Apex. I won't leave the team hanging." "That would be appreciated," he said. And just like that, the door closed. Not with drama, but with dignity. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, suspended state. I wasn't an employee anymore, but I wasn't a stranger either. I came in every morning as a consultant, logged into a temporary visitor badge, and spent most of my time transferring knowledge, methodically, clearly, and without bitterness. I sat down with each of my former accounts, explained the transitions, and made sure no one was left in the dark. I gave Patrick detailed notes on handling long-term clients, trained Zoe on the nuances of Apex internal decision flow, and helped Danielle and Troy finalize deliverables for a legacy campaign that had been stuck in development limbo. I could feel the energy in the team shift. There was pride in what we had done, and sadness in the goodbye none of us had wanted. But more than that, there was respect. Not just for me, but for the way I had chosen to leave. One afternoon, Amanda pulled me aside in the break room. "We've been talking," she said, lowering her voice, "about following you." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "To Apex," she said. "They're building something, and we want to be part of it, if the offer is there." "You don't owe me that," I said carefully. "You don't have to follow me out of loyalty." "This isn't about loyalty," Amanda said. "It's about leadership and trust, and the chance to work on something that's actually healthy." Her words hit deeper than I expected. Over the next week, I had quiet, honest conversations with each team member. Amanda accepted the role of digital marketing manager at Apex without hesitation. Troy joined as creative director, eager to escape the toxic politics that had drained his joy. Danielle signed on as our content strategy lead, grinning as she said, "I've always wanted to build something from scratch." Patrick and Zoe, though, chose to stay at Horizon. They had their own reasons: stability, opportunity, family considerations, and I respected that completely. We promised to stay in touch, and we meant it. By the time I officially left Horizon for good, my new team was already forming around me, and it felt right.
Makes sense.
Starting at Apex was like stepping into sunlight after months of walking in fog. The office was smaller, the budget tighter, the expectations higher in some ways, lower in others. But the autonomy, the trust, was immediate. My first week was a blur of onboarding, executive briefings, and department introductions. I had a new title, a new office, and a new responsibility: to build an in-house marketing department that would rival the best agencies in Chicago. And I wasn't doing it alone. Amanda hit the ground running, building out data infrastructure and analytics dashboards that gave us immediate insights into campaign performance. Troy redesigned Apex's entire visual brand within 2 weeks: sleek, modern, confident. Danielle rewrote product messaging that finally made sense to both engineers and customers. It wasn't perfect. We had arguments. We missed a few deadlines in the beginning, but it was ours. And we were building something meaningful. Our first major campaign launched after 6 weeks. A cross-channel rollout that included digital ads, thought leadership pieces, influencer partnerships, and a comprehensive landing funnel, all targeting mid-sized tech firms looking to upgrade their security protocols. The campaign exceeded projections by 38% in the first month alone. The CEO, Susan Bennett, called us into her office and said, "This is the kind of thinking that justifies our move in-house. You've done something exceptional." That moment, it meant everything, because it wasn't just success. It was validation. One night, after a long strategy session, I stood by the large window of my new office, sipping cold tea and watching the lights flicker across downtown. Amanda walked in quietly and leaned against the frame. "You good?" she asked. "I think so," I said. "It's still sinking in." She smiled. "You know what I keep thinking about?" "What?" That first night when you texted me those notes after the firing, I remember thinking, who does that? Who helps after being burned? I shrugged. It wasn't about them. It was about doing the work right. Amanda nodded slowly. And that's why we followed you. Her words stayed with me long after she left the room. Months passed, and our team grew, not just in size, but in reputation. Apex's board approved expansion of our budget. We began speaking at conferences, publishing white papers, becoming known for innovation. Occasionally, I'd run into Allison at events, industry mixers, client dinners, panels. Our exchanges were polite, professional, but never warm. I had heard whispers that she'd faced internal reviews after the Apex debacle, that she'd dialed back her authoritarian style, that she'd lost the trust of several board members. But I didn't feel smug, just distant, like the story I'd been living before was someone else's.
Boom.
Nearly 2 years after that day, I was walked out with a cardboard box. I was asked to give a talk at a Women in Leadership panel downtown. My topic? Navigating professional setbacks with integrity. I opened my speech like this. There was a morning 2 years ago when I lost everything I thought defined me. My title, my office, my team, and my place at the table. It was taken in a 3-minute meeting without warning. I left with a cardboard box and no idea what came next. What I didn't know then, but understand deeply now, is that I didn't lose my career that day. I found the beginning of something better. The room was silent. Not because they hadn't heard stories like mine before, but because they had. And this one ended differently. I closed with this. Excellence isn't just about performance. It's about values, about how you show up when it would be easier to walk away, about standing in the fire and choosing not to throw it back, but to rise from it. That night, as I walked home through the city lights, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything had gone as planned, but because when things fell apart, I chose to build something stronger. Apex became more than a job, it became a proving ground for the team, for the vision, for me. 6 months after launching our first major campaign, the results were undeniable. We'd increased qualified inbound leads by 52%, grown our subscriber base, and landed 3 new enterprise clients. The executive board, once cautious about bringing marketing in-house, now referenced our team as the model department. It felt like everything I had fought for at Horizon was finally happening, just not at Horizon. One afternoon, Susan Bennett pulled me aside after a leadership meeting. "I want you to know," she said, "that your decision to come here wasn't just the right move for Apex. It was the best decision we could have made. We wouldn't be where we are without your leadership." She said it with no agenda, no politics, just clarity. And that was the moment it finally clicked. I hadn't just survived what happened at Horizon, I had outgrown it. That fall, I got a message from Patrick. He and Zoe were still at Horizon, both doing well. He'd recently been promoted to senior account lead, and Zoe had taken over a major client relationship with great success. "We still use the client intake framework you created," he wrote. "Even Allison swears by it now." I didn't know whether to laugh or be impressed. Later that week, I ran into Michael at a fundraiser for a local startup incubator. He greeted me warmly, asked how things were going at Apex, and then said something that surprised me. "I owe you more than an apology, Rebecca," he said quietly. "We didn't just mishandle your departure. We underestimated your impact, and we lost something valuable because of it." It wasn't an official admission, but it was more than I'd ever expected. I thanked him, not because I needed it, but because I meant it. The truth is, without that betrayal, I might never have left, and I was exactly where I needed to be. A year into my role at Apex, I was invited to join their executive leadership circle. It was informal, bi-weekly dinners, strategic offsites, early looks at new product development, but it meant something important. I wasn't just the marketing girl anymore. I was part of the vision. We launched a mentorship program for early career women in tech, and I personally mentored 3 young hires in their first 6 months. I made sure no one felt like they had to earn their worth through silence the way I had. The culture we built prioritized excellence, but not at the expense of well-being. People worked hard, but they also felt safe, heard, seen. We celebrated big wins with rooftop wine nights, and when Amanda's dad had a health scare, we restructured her entire workload without a second thought. Troy's boyfriend proposed during our team retreat in Colorado, and we threw a spontaneous celebration in the lodge's dining room with cake, champagne, and terrible karaoke. We weren't just coworkers. We were becoming what I'd always hoped work could be: a team built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Still, every now and then, I'd have quiet moments of reflection, especially late at night when the city was still and my apartment was lit only by streetlights through the window. I'd think back to that morning in the conference room at Horizon, the silence, the humiliation, the feeling of being cast out in front of people I loved. And then I'd think about what came after. The moment I chose not to burn everything down. The moment I chose to act with clarity instead of chaos. The moment I trusted myself. That was the real turning point. Not the day Allison fired me. Not the day Apex hired me. But the day I said to myself, I know who I am and this will not break me. On the second anniversary of our first Apex campaign launch, James took our entire department out to dinner. He made a toast that caught me off guard. To Rebecca, he said, lifting his glass. The reason Apex marketing exists. The strategist, the builder, the leader. You didn't just lead us through a crisis, you built something from it, and that's the kind of leadership that transforms companies. Everyone clinked glasses, smiling. Amanda leaned over and whispered, I hope you're finally letting that one sink in. I laughed, a little teary-eyed. I'm trying. Because the truth is, it had taken me almost 2 years to really accept what I had done. Not just survive, not just succeed, but redefine what success meant for me. A few weeks later, I received a LinkedIn message from someone I hadn't heard from in ages, Catherine, my very first mentor at Horizon. I opened it with curiosity and a slight flutter of nostalgia. Rebecca, I've been following your journey from afar. I saw the article in Forbes about the Apex turnaround, and I wasn't surprised. You always had that grit and insight, even when you didn't know it yet. I'm proud of the leader you've become. If you ever want to catch up, coffee's on me. Durandé. I smiled as I read it. That version of me, the one fresh out of college, afraid to speak up, always second-guessing herself, would never have imagined this life, this version of me. And yet she was the one who laid the foundation. She just needed time to grow into it. I responded. Catherine. Thank you. Your voice was one of the first that told me to stop playing small. I'm glad you were right. Let's get that coffee soon. Then I closed my laptop and returned to the view outside. Chicago sparkled like a constellation of new beginnings. And I knew, deep in my bones, that no matter what came next, I would never again let someone else decide my worth. Because I had earned every bit of it. And because I had learned the most powerful lesson of all. You can be pushed out. But no one can push you down if you know how to stand tall. The weeks turned into months, and Apex's internal marketing department solidified its place, not just within the company, but within the industry. Our campaigns were winning awards. Our strategies were being cited in white papers and case studies. I was asked to guest lecture at Northwestern's business school on leadership, not just marketing. And yet what mattered most to me wasn't the accolades. It was the culture we'd built. One afternoon, while reviewing a hiring proposal with Amanda and Troy, I paused mid-sentence and looked around the room. The whiteboards were filled with ideas scribbled in marker. Someone had brought in donuts. Danielle was laughing in the hallway with a new intern. It hit me. This was the exact kind of environment I had once dreamed of creating. Safe, energized, collaborative, honest. And I had helped build it from the ground up. That evening, I stayed late, cleaning up a slide deck for our upcoming product launch. I moved through the office in silence, the familiar hum of HVAC and keyboard clicks keeping me company. On the wall next to my desk was a framed photograph of our team at the launch event from a year ago, arms linked, smiling like we had won the world. Because in many ways we had. The version of myself who had been fired without warning, without dignity, would never have imagined this life. But she had earned it. And more importantly, she had chosen it. About a month later, I received a panel invitation from the National Association of Strategic Marketers. They were hosting a summit in New York and wanted me to headline a keynote on rebuilding from collapse. At first, I hesitated, not because I didn't have a story to share, but because I wasn't sure I wanted to reopen that wound. The Horizon experience was still part of me, but it no longer defined me. Amanda nudged me toward yes. You've rebuilt something better, she said. Tell them how. So I said yes. And I wrote the keynote on a flight to New York, somewhere over Ohio, with a cup of too hot coffee and the hum of strangers around me. I didn't hold back. I told the whole story, my rise at Horizon, the betrayal, the public firing, the way it fractured something inside me. And then I told them about the rebuild, about being invited back but choosing to walk forward instead, about starting over without bitterness, about leading with integrity, even when no one else did. The keynote was received with a standing ovation. Several audience members approached me afterward, eyes shining, thanking me for putting words to their own silent experiences, moments they had been humiliated, diminished, or told they weren't enough. "You helped me see it differently," one woman whispered, "that maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I'm just not done rebuilding yet." And I knew then that the pain I had endured hadn't been wasted. It had transformed into purpose. Back in Chicago, the momentum at Apex only grew. We expanded into new verticals, and our in-house marketing department grew from 5 to 14. I hired a full-time brand psychologist, added a behavioral economist to our analytics team, and created a rotational internship program with local colleges. I no longer managed every project directly, but I stayed close to the strategic direction. I led quarterly vision sessions with the executive team, mentored rising talent, and ensured the culture stayed grounded in transparency and creativity. It wasn't about control. It was about clarity and trust. Two things I had once been denied. Then, one quiet morning, I received an email with a subject line that made my chest tighten. "Request for coffee, Allison Parker." I stared at the screen for a long time. I hadn't heard from her in nearly 2 years. The email was short, polite. She was in Chicago for a few days and wondered if we could meet. "No agenda," she wrote, "just a conversation I've been meaning to have." I debated ignoring it, but the truth was I was curious. So I said yes. We met at a quiet cafe near the river. She looked different, more subdued, somehow. Still impeccably dressed, but her posture was softer, her eyes less guarded. "Thank you for coming," she said, setting down her drink. "I know you didn't have to." "I'm not sure what to expect," I admitted. "I'm not here to justify anything," she said quickly. "I'm not proud of how I handled your departure. I thought I was protecting the company, moving fast. But I didn't take the time to understand what you'd built, and I didn't expect the fallout." I nodded. Apex nearly walked. "I know," she said. "Michael told me eventually. I was lucky the board didn't let me go." There was a long pause. "I didn't reach out to apologize," she said slowly. "I know that doesn't mean much now, but I wanted to acknowledge it. You were right to do what you did, and I've had to learn a lot the hard way since then." I studied her face. For the first time, I believed her. We talked for another 15 minutes. Nothing heavy, just mutual updates. And when we said goodbye, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt complete. I had outgrown that chapter. And now so had she. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in months. Closure doesn't always come with an apology. Sometimes it comes with knowing you no longer need one. It felt true, and it felt like peace. The day Apex celebrated our 2-year anniversary as an in-house marketing department, I stood quietly at the back of the rooftop terrace, watching my team toast with sparkling water and champagne under the glow of string lights. Laughter echoed between the buildings. Music played low in the background. Amanda was showing off baby pictures. She'd just come back from maternity leave. And Troy had everyone in stitches impersonating our finance lead's monotone voice. I sipped my drink and let it all sink in. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was legacy. It was proof that success doesn't come from clinging tightly to what you've built, but from having the courage to let go, rebuild, and trust yourself in the unknown. The version of me who once believed that loyalty alone could protect a career would have been shocked to see this future, not because of the titles or recognition, but because of how deeply grounded I had become. I knew who I was now. Not just Rebecca Collins, Director of Marketing at Apex, but Rebecca Collins, builder of culture, advocate for resilience, proof that integrity wins, even if the path is longer, slower, more painful. About a week later, I was asked to return to my alma mater to give a guest lecture on strategic career building. I stood in a packed lecture hall, filled with students eager to break into the industry I'd once clawed my way into, and I told them the story. Not just of my rise or my success, but of the day it all came crashing down. I told them about the humiliation, the confusion, the choice I faced between retaliation and reinvention, and the quiet power in choosing the latter. I ended with this. Your career isn't defined by the job you have today. It's defined by how you handle the moments that could break you. And trust me, those moments will come. but they don't have to end you. They can remake you. After the lecture, a student approached me, eyes bright with tears. "I needed to hear that," she said. "I've been thinking about quitting because of how I've been treated at my internship. But maybe it's not about walking away. Maybe it's about walking towards something better." And in that moment, I knew exactly why it had all happened the way it did. Because stories like mine, like ours, need to be told. Not for sympathy, but for truth. 2.5 years after my firing, I got a message from a former Horizon colleague, someone who had stayed long after I left. "Allison's gone," the message read. "She left last month. The official line is pursuing new opportunities, but everyone knows she was pushed out after client satisfaction scores plummeted. They're doing an internal restructure. Honestly, it's a mess." I stared at the screen, and instead of satisfaction, I felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Not for her downfall, but for the reminder that nothing is permanent. And everything comes full circle. I didn't reply to the message. There was nothing more to say. That chapter had long closed. One evening, after a long day of back-to-back meetings, I came home to find a letter in the mail. A handwritten card. From James Richardson. Inside it said, "Rebecca, hiring you was one of the best decisions I've made in my career. Not just because of the success you've brought to Apex, but because of the example you've set for leadership. You've raised the standard here, and that ripple will outlast both of us. Thank you. Eddie James." I held the note in my hands for a long time before slipping it into my desk drawer, next to my grandmother's pearls and a framed photo of the team from our first Apex launch. Symbols of where I came from and how far I'd come. If I've learned anything from this journey, it's this. Your reputation isn't built on your title. It's built on how you show up when things fall apart. It's built on whether you choose dignity over ego, whether you fight for what's right, even when no one's watching, whether you keep building, even after being told you're not needed. My story started with a termination. It ended with transformation. And I wouldn't change a single moment of it. So, if you're still watching, thank you. If you've ever been undervalued, overlooked, or cast aside, I want you to remember, one person's decision doesn't define your worth. You do. Tell me in the comments, have you ever faced a professional setback that made you stronger? I'd love to hear your story. And if mine helped you in any way, like this video, subscribe, and stay connected. Because there's more to come. Not just stories of survival, but stories of strength, of growth, of becoming. Until next time, stay grounded, stay brave. And never forget, your greatest setback might just be the start of your greatest story.